UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber. UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber.
කම්ෆර්ට් මූඩියෙන් භාගයයි කලක් පවතින අලුත් පෙනුමයි.
Tonight, long-awaited clarity. The Finance Minister tells the Cabinet that EPF and ETF are not covered by the surcharge tax bill. What for? The PUCSL denies the Electricity Board's request for scheduled power cuts.
Uninterrupted power supply will be there for the next 3 months by reducing the generation of hydroelectricity and obtaining the standby generators of the private users into the national grid.
Energy security. India sends 40,000 metric tons of diesel.
Friends in need are the friends in deed. India is committed to stand with Sri Lanka.
Eyeing the UNHRC, signature campaign kicks off to repeal the Prevention of Terrorism Act.
For 42 years, we have travelled with this most draconian law in our country.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Tuesday, the 15th of February, 2022.
Fair and Lovely will alut nama then Glow and Lovely. Fair and Lovely then Glow and Lovely.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening. Welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhamma Kekanayaka. Now, Minister of Trade Bandula Gunawardena today gave clarity to the saga surrounding the surcharge tax bill by giving the Finance Minister's stance on whether the bill covers the EPF and the ETF. Addressing the Cabinet media briefing, he insisted that both funds are exempted from the bill and an amendment will be introduced when the bill is about to be passed in Parliament to that effect.
A big uncertainty over the recent past had been whether the EPF and ETF are liable for the surcharge tax. The opposition had been vociferous against whipping up public protests. There was also opposition to the two funds being subjected to the surcharge tax within the government, with the Minister of Labour specially voicing his concerns both inside and outside the Parliament. But finally, the Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa has given the Cabinet clarity about the situation. The surcharge tax will not apply to the EPF and ETF.
උද්ඝෝෂකයන් සියලු දෙනාට මුදල් අමාත්‍යතුමා බොහොම පැහැදිලි ප්‍රතිඥාවක් කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට දුන්නා. බදු අධිභාර 50 කෙටුම්පත පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේදී සම්මත වෙන අවස්ථාවේදී මේ සමාගම් නිර්වචනයට අදාළ වෙන සේවක අර්ථසාධක අරමුදල හා සේවා නියුක්තයන්ගේ භාරකාර අරමුදල එයින් ඉවත් කරන බවට සංශෝධනයක් අපි පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ගෙනෙනවා. ඒ පිළිබඳ කිසිවෙකුත් අබමල් රේණුවකවත් සැකයක් සංකාවක් තියාගන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ.
The minister went on to elaborate how the EPF and ETF got embroiled in the surcharge tax confusion.
මේ ප්‍රශ්නය ඇති වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කෙසේද? පසුගිය රජය දැවැන්ත පරිමාණයේ විදේශ විනිමය අර්බුදයට මුහුණ දීලා සිටියා. එවකට එම රජයේ මුදල් අමාත්‍ය රවි කරුණානායක මහතා ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදල සමග ගිවිසුමකට ගියා. 2017 2018 2019 කියන අවුරුදු 3 ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදලේ ගිවිසුමට අනුව තමයි එම රජය ආණ්ඩුකරණය කළේ. ඒ සඳහා ලබාගත් ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් බිලියන 1.5ක ණය මුදල. ඒ ණය මුදල ලබාගෙන ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදල කිව්වා 2020 වන විට අයවැය පරතරය දළදේශීය නිෂ්පාදනයේ 3.5 දක්වා අඩු කළ යුතුයි කියලා. ඒට අදාළ වැඩසටහන තුල කුමක්ද කළ යුත්තේ? අයවැය පරතරය අඩු කරන්න නම් රජයේ ආදායම වැඩි කරන්න. වියදම අඩු කරන්න. ආදායම වැඩි කරන්න නම් වැඩියෙන් බදු පනවන්න. ඉතින් විශාල ලෙස අසාමාන්‍ය ලෙස බදු පනවනකොට මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ යුගයේ 2006 ලබලා දීලා තිබුණ සියලුම බදු සහන අයින් කළා. අපි ඒට විරුද්ධව අධිකරණයට ගියා. ඒ අවස්ථාවේදී රටේ විශාල විරෝධතාවයක් පැන නැගුණා. ඒ අවස්ථාවේදී තමයි සමාගම් කියන නිර්වචනය ඇතුළත් කරලා තියෙනවා සේවක අර්ථසාධක අරමුදල හා සේවා නියුක්තයන්ගේ භාරකාර අරමුදල විශ්‍රාම වැටුප් සියල්ල. ඒ අනුව 2017 දේශීය ආදායම් පනතේ 195 වෙනි වගන්තියේ සමාගම නිර්වචනය කරන විට ඒට ඇතුළත් කරලා තියෙනවා අර්ථසාධක අරමුදල හා භාරකාර අරමුදල. ඒ නිසා තමයි මේ වැරදි මතය ප්‍රචාරය කරන්න හම්බුනේ අර්ථසාධකයටත් කොල්ල කන්න හදනවාය කියන දුර්මතය සමාජගත කරන්න පුළුවන්කම ලැබුණේ.
On a separate note, the Trade Minister revealed how the bottled water projects launched by the government will save money for the people and state institutions alike.
අපි දැන් සති කිහිපයක සිට පරිසර හිතකාමී පානීය ජල බෝතල් ව්‍යාපෘතියක් පරිසර ඇමතුමත් මමත් එකතු වෙලා ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීම ආරම්භ කළා. මේ සතොස පානීය ජල බෝතලයක් මිලදීගෙන පානය කරලා අවසන් වෙලා ආපසු බාර දුන් විට සතොසට රුපියල් 10ක් ආපහු ගෙවනවා ඉතිහාසයේ පළවෙනි වතාවට. ඒ අනුව පානීය ජල බෝතල් රාජ්‍ය සංස්ථා ව්‍යවස්ථාපිත මණ්ඩල රජයේ දෙපාර්තමේන්තු යනාදී මිලදී ගැනීමේදී සුවිශේෂ රාජ්‍ය වියදම් අඩු කිරීමට ක්‍රමවේදයක් අපි සකස් කරලා තියෙනවා. මේ පානීය ජල බෝතලයක් SLS සහතික ලාංඡන සහිත රුපියල් 35යි සිල්ලර මිල. එහිදී රජයේ ආයතනයත් තොග වශයෙන් මිලදී ගැනීමේදී අපි ලබා දෙන වට්ටම 117.22ක් රුපියල් 6ක්. එවිට ජල බෝතලයේ රුපියල් 29යි. ආපසු බාර දුන් විට දෙනවා රුපියල් 10ක්. ජල බෝතලයක් සඳහා රජයේ වියදම් කළ යුත්තේ සුද්ධ වශයෙන් රුපියල් 19යි. මිලි ලීටර් 500ක බෝතලයක්.
In the meantime, the cabinet also gave the go-ahead to provide 15 kilograms of flour for 115,867 beneficiary families in the plantation sector on a monthly basis. The cabinet also approved the proposal to design a roadmap that will be revised every 5 years after review of the progress to make Sri Lanka a carbon net zero country by 2050. It also gave the nod to formulate a 5-year strategic plan and to appoint a committee of experts to do so. Meanwhile, in a bid to promote non-motorized transport, it has been jointly agreed by the relevant ministries to mark bicycle lanes suitable for existing roads and upgrade existing pedestrian lanes. Steps to include bicycle and pedestrian lanes for future roads too have been agreed. To take necessary measures to encourage the use of bicycles by government officer staff and to provide necessary facilities for office cyclists including parking and access are also given the go-ahead. After considering the need to identify alternative methods for importing essential food items and raw materials required for export-oriented industries and industrial goods, the Cabinet has green-lighted the appointment of several subcommittees to discuss importation of goods with foreign countries. As such, 3 subcommittees are appointed for China, Japan and the Middle East, with the Foreign Minister chairing all 3.
Chairman of the Public Utilities Commission, Janaka Ratnayaka, assures that there will be no scheduled power cuts for the rest of this month and the 2 months after that. He said that the Commission ordered the Ceylon Electricity Board to reduce hydropower generation and add the standby generators of the private sector to the national grid to ensure an uninterrupted power supply.
Due to the reduction in water levels in the reservoirs for electricity generation at the moment, the Ceylon Electricity Board sought permission from the Public Utilities Commission to implement scheduled power cuts for the rest of the month of February as well as in March and April. Following discussions with the CB officials on Saturday, the PUCSL said that their decision as a regulator will be announced today. This evening, the much-awaited decision was announced by the PUCSL chairman.
Public Utilities Commission realizing the obligations towards the country and the electricity consumers that the uninterrupted power supply will be there for the next 3 months by reducing the generation of hydroelectricity by almost 50% and obtaining the standby generators of the private users into the national grid and assuming that certain factors will remain constant like fuel supply, then the generators will not have any breakdowns and things like that we will make, and we are quite sure that within next couple of months, especially February, March and April, there will not be scheduled power cut. According to our analysis and the data, it shows that we can manage our electricity without any scheduled power interruption until we get into our next rainy season, that is in May. So our main obstacle is that to curtail the consumption of hydropower, which is depleting almost by every day. Now it has come down to the level of only around 47%. Our main concern is that reducing the water consumption for hydropower generation, and we have given directions to CB to limit the use of water and reduce the generation of electricity by hydro 2 gigawatts 5 hours a day from tomorrow. And by bringing certain measures to connect the standby generators to the national grid and by limiting maybe usage of air conditioners in government sector as well as the private residencies in high rises in Colombo and influencing the private sector organizations to use their own generators for their own the electricity supply, we are quite sure that PUCSL can manage the situation without scheduled power interruption.
Further, the PUCSL chairman Janaka Ratnayaka elaborated on the process of adding private standby generators to the national grid.
දැන් CB එක දැනටමත් මෙගාවට්ස් 32ක ජෙනරේටර්ස් කනෙක්ට් කරලා තියෙනවා නැෂනල් ග්‍රිඩ් එකට. ඒ වගේම අපි දැන්ට හඳුනාගෙන තියෙනවා මෙගාවට්ස් 325ක ජෙනරේටර්ස් කොළඹ සහ සදාසන ප්‍රදේශවල. ඒවා ඔක්කොම අපි කනෙක්ට් කරනවා. අපි දැන්ටමත් අයිඩෙන්ටිෆයි කරලා තියෙනවා නොදන් ප්‍රොවින්ස් එකේ තියෙනවා සාමාන්‍යයෙන් 100 මෙගාවට්ස් වගේ ජෙනරේටර්ස් එක එක තැන්වල. ඒවා පද්ධතියට එකතු කර ගැනීමෙන් ඒ ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳා ගැනීමේ විසඳුමට අපි යනවා. ඊට අමතරව කියලා තියෙනවා කිසිම ජනන පද්ධති එකක්වත් ඊළඟ මාස 3 ඇතුළත කිසිම ආකාරයකින්වත් නඩත්තු කටයුත්තක් සඳහා හරි නවත්තන්න බෑ කියන කොන්දේසෙත් අපි දාලා තියෙනවා.
Though uninterrupted power supply is assured, there however can be unexpected failures at power stations. In such situations, the PUCSL has recommended 3 options to the Ceylon Electricity Board.
මෙගාවට් 100ක බලාගාරයක් බිඳ වැටුනොත් අපිට විදුලි කප්පාදුවකින් තොරව යන්න පුළුවන්. මෙගාවට් 200ක විදුලි බලාගාරයක් බිඳ වැටුනොත් අපිට පැයක පමණ කප්පාදුවකට යන්න වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම මෙගාවට් 300ක බලාගාරයක් බිඳ වැටුනොත් අපිට පැය එකහමාරක පමණ විදුලිය කපා දැමීමේ ක්‍රියාදාමයකට යන්න වෙනවා.
The Ceylon Electricity Board and the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation have come to an accommodation that the CB could directly import its fuel requirements for power generation. The PUCSL chairman also had an update on that.
වලින් පාට බලනවා ලංකා විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලයට අවශ්‍ය තෙල් සංචිත ප්‍රමාණය තමන්ම ආනයනය කර ගැනීමට ඒ සඳහා අවශ්‍ය පියවර අපි ගනිමින් සිටිනවා. ගම්මන්පිල ඇමතුමා ඉතා සහයෝගයෙන් කැමති වුණා ඒ අවශ්‍ය ස්ටෝරේජ්, ට්‍රාන්ස්පෝර්ටේෂන් ඒ ඔක්කොම නිකන් කරලා දෙන බවට. ඊට අමතරව මහ බැංකුවේ අධිපතිතුමා කැමති වුණා CB එක සල්ලි දෙනවා රුපීස් ඒකට අවශ්‍ය ඩොලර් ප්‍රතිපාදන ලබා දෙන බවට. ඒතකොට අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඉදිරි දවස් 15 ඇතුළත ලංකා විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලය විසින් තමන්ගේ තෙල් ආනයනය කරගත්තොත් මම හිතන්නේ CPS එක පස්සේ යන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. ඒතකොට මාසෙකට සරියන තෙල් අපි ආනයනය කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඩීසල් මෙට්‍රික් ටොන් 20000කුත් ඒ වගේම නැෆ්තා මෙට්‍රික් ටොන් 20000කුත්.
On emergency power purchases, the PUCSL gave this stance.
මේ 3 මාස තුලදී අඛණ්ඩ විදුලි සැපයීම සඳහා හදිසි විදුලි මිලදී ගැනීමේ අවශ්‍යතාවයක් පැන නොනගින බව මහජන උපයෝගිතා කොමිසමේ අදහස සහ ඒක අපි අවධාරණය කරනවා.
In the meantime, with there being rumours of a cabinet paper being submitted seeking to make emergency power purchases, the cabinet co-spokesperson cleared the air.
කුගේ ඇමතුමා කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලෙ හිටියෙත් නැහැ. ඔහු විදේශගත වෙලා ඉන්නේ. සහ එවැනි කැබිනට් පත්‍රිකාවක් ඉදිරිපත් වුණෙත් නැහැ.
We will see you shortly on the other side of this break. Bear with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, 40,000 metric tons of diesel from India arrived in the island today on credit from the Indian Oil Corporation. It is the result of talks between Energy Minister Uday Gammampilla and Indian envoy in Sri Lanka, Gopal Bagle. Speaking at the Colombo port, Bagle said that India is committed to ensuring Sri Lanka's energy security.
On the 2nd of February, Sri Lanka inked an agreement with India for a $500 million credit line to purchase petroleum products due to the prevailing foreign exchange crisis in the island. With the fuel credit line expected to take some time to be finalized and the higher demand for diesel from the power sector at the moment, the Energy Ministry has discussed with the Indian High Commission in Colombo the diesel requirement in the near future. With that being the case, Indian High Commissioner in Sri Lanka Gopal Bagle has instructed LIOC to send a diesel consignment to Sri Lanka on credit to ensure the country's energy security. And today, 40,000 metric tons of diesel from the IOC arrived at the Colombo port via the oil tanker Swarna Pushp. The consignment was handed over to the Energy Minister Uday Gammampilla by the Indian envoy to Sri Lanka.
We are very grateful for India for helping us when we are needy. As the saying goes, friends in need are the friends in deed. So India has proven that India is a good friend of Sri Lanka, not by words but by deeds. We have civilizational ties with Sri Lanka. Both our countries in the recent past have experienced the difficulties of COVID, and now as the global economy is trying to fight the challenges of COVID and its economic difficulties, India is committed to stand with Sri Lanka, and we hope that this cooperation will continue so that the friendship between the two countries continues to grow stronger.
Now, Ilangai Tamil Arasu Katchi parliamentarian M.A. Sumandaran today voiced his reservations against the mooted amendments to the Prevention of Terrorism Act and yet again insisted that it be repealed. His comments came as a signature campaign against the PTA kicked off, with another ITAC parliamentarian accusing the government of merely attempting to fool the international community ahead of the United Nations Human Rights Council sessions.
An island-wide campaign was launched today by the organisation Justice for All in order to collect signatures for a petition urging the government to repeal the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Convener of the organisation, parliamentarian M.A. Sumantiran, along with other political leaders, religious leaders and various civil society leaders carried out the campaign today in front of the Fort Railway Station.
Terrorism Temporary Provisions Act. It's called temporary provisions because in 1979 it was brought just for 6 months and thereafter it was extended for 6 months at a time, and in 1982 it was made a permanent feature of our statute books. And for 42 years we have travelled with this most draconian law in our country. We are calling for its total repeal. It hasn't only affected the Tamils, it has been used against the Tamils in an extensive way, but it has also been used against the Sinhala youth. We know how it was used in 88-89. We know how it is being used against the Muslims now. Indefinite preventive detention, and if a person is produced before court, there is no bail. The law says the magistrate shall remand the person. And when the trial starts in the High Court, the High Court judge shall remand the person. That's what the law says. This law is most draconian. Various provisions of this law go against all international standards and norms. So the law itself must be repealed. That's the promise. That's the guarantee. That's the undertaking that was given by the government. So this signature campaign is to tell the government, as Sri Lankans, not only from the north, from everywhere in the country, the people are calling for the repeal of this law now.
අද උදේ පළවෙනියටම අස්සන තැබුවේ ගරු කාදිනල්තුමාන් ඒ පනතේ ඕනම කෙනෙක් ඕන්ලක අත්තරංගුවට ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඕන තරම් කාලයක් කිරේ තියා ගන්න පුළුවන්. අද ආණ්ඩුව බොරු සංශෝධනයක් ගෙනලා ජාත්‍යන්තරේ රවට්ටන්න මානව හිමිකම් කොමිසම රවට්ටන්න අලුත් සංශෝධන කියලා ගෙනත් තියෙනවා. මේ සංශෝධන වලින් රට රවට්ටන්න පුළුවන්. රටේ ඉන්න සමහර ජනතාව රවට්ටන්න පුළුවන්. ජාත්‍යන්තරේ රවට්ටන්න බෑ.
ජාත්‍යන්තර වශයෙන් අපේ රටට පැනවිය හැකි සම්බාධක ඉවත් කිරීම සඳහා කොන්දේසි හැටියට මේ පනත සංශෝධනය කළ යුතුයි කියන බලපෑම ආවට පස්සේ දැන් ලහිලහියේ ප්‍රෝඩා සහිත ත්‍රස්තවාදී කටයුතු වල යෙදුණයි කියලා බොරු චෝදනා නගමින් මේ කටයුත්ත දිගටම ගෙන යාම සඳහා දැන් සුළු සංශෝධන කීපයක් ඉදිරිපත් කරලා දැන් පනතක් ඉදිරිපත් කරලා තිබෙනවා. මේක අපිට පිළිගන්න බෑ.
Now, the Ministry of Health urged the public today to take illness seriously, as COVID, dengue and viral infection are all currently in circulation. Health authorities called on the public to get tested immediately for dengue first if fever persists for more than 48 hours.
The Ministry of Health announced today that there are 3 febrile illnesses in circulation in the community at the moment. These are the COVID-19 virus, dengue and the typical viral infection. Health authorities today urge the public to be mindful of their symptoms if they get sick and advised on what the procedure should be for such patients. This is because underestimating the symptoms brought on by any one of the diseases, especially COVID and dengue, could have dire consequences.
If a person is suffering from fever and if the fever continues beyond 48 hours, definitely you have to get yourself tested for dengue first or simultaneously for the COVID-19. Basically, you should not stay at home without getting tested if you have symptoms and symptoms continue for more than 48 hours. And also, if you are having mild symptoms and if you don't have the testing facilities at hand, still it is better and we highly recommend that you should stay at home and get yourself isolated from the weak family members, because we do not know, it could be mild COVID-19 Omicron illness or it could be any other illness. But if you expect in the worst scenario, we need to make sure that we are not going to spread this disease to the immediate family members who are weak.
Nevertheless, a majority of deaths taking place in the country right now is the doing of the COVID-19 virus. Last evening, 36 COVID-related fatalities were confirmed, and in the past week, the daily deaths have been between 20 and 40. This figure once stood between 10 to 20. Similarly, the country's daily COVID cases are also on the rise.
We cannot 100% say whether all these cases are Omicron or not, but there are considerable number of patients who have been struggling in ICUs and dying late after 2-3 weeks. So therefore, still there will be at least some proportion of Delta infected persons also among these deaths. Whatever, whether it is Delta or Omicron, the likelihood of death is depending on your level of immunity, which is inherent to your body and depending on your age and the other comorbidities that you all are having, and also the treatment that you are taking. To improve your immunity, there is no other way other than getting the required vaccine.
In the meantime, a study conducted by the University of California, Irvine suggests that antihistamine medication could possibly reduce the effects of symptoms from long COVID. Following a COVID infection, some people develop symptoms such as brain fog, joint pains and fatigue that last for 6 months or sometimes even longer. As such, researchers stated that antihistamine medication that could be brought over the counter are able to revive long COVID patients back to 90% of their pre-COVID status. However, the researchers urge the people to not resort to buying antihistamines without professional medical guidance.
In the meantime, the health trade unions announced today that they will temporarily suspend their island-wide strike from tomorrow. Chairman of the Federation of Health Professionals, Dr. Ravi Kumudesh, said that the Federation decided to suspend the strike for 14 days starting from 8 a.m. tomorrow. He said that this was done in order to give the government time to announce permanent measures that could be taken in order to solve their problems. However, for the 9th consecutive day, 17 health trade unions carried out the strike, outlining their demands today. Due to the strike, once again, many people looking for treatment at hospitals were left high and dry. Now taking a look at the Colombo Bourse, the all-share price index gained 106.01 points to end at 12,364.80 today, while the S&P SL 20 index of more liquid stocks closed at 4,217.23, following a decline of 18.12 points. Market turnover was 3.2 billion rupees. Now here's Hiruni Pereira with a brief report on today's market performance.
Today, again we saw market turning into red from the green zone while getting disrupted to the 3-day winning spree and losing about 106 points for the day, mainly due to hovering uncertainties in the economy. However, market turnover and trades slightly improved compared to yesterday, with turnover recording at rupees 3.2 billion and trades at 36,077. So today market started with a slight uptrend, hitting an intraday high of 12,580, gaining about 110 points. But then selling started and all the gains were erased as market continued the decline throughout the day and closing at 12,364 as investors continued the negative sentiment, mainly with the selling in retail favorite stocks with profit taking happening. So today's decline was mainly led by retail favorite counters which are operating in the transportation, food, beverage and tobacco and capital goods sector. Turnover of rupees 3.2 billion was led by a 50% contribution from the diversified financial sector.
Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan rupee remained unchanged at 202.99 cents against the US dollar today as well. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee fared against other major currencies during the day. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.